Are you falling right now? Even as you sit perfectly still, not metaphorically, not poetically, literally according to the deepest idea Einstein attached to gravity. If you think falling only happens when you slip off a ledge, you're already inside the illusion. And the scary part is, your senses will defend that illusion with total confidence. Here's the uncomfortable twist. The feeling you call weight is not gravity pulling you down. It's the floor pushing you up, your chair, your shoes, your bed. Everything is constantly forcing you to do the opposite of what your body would naturally do if nothing stopped it. That sounds extreme, but hold that thought, because this one reversal makes the everyday world feel suddenly suspicious. Picture a sealed elevator. No windows, no way to know what's happening outside. The cable snaps. In the first instant of freefall, something eerie happens. You don't feel more gravity, you feel less. Then, if the fall is clean enough, you feel almost nothing at all. Your stomach floats, your arms drift, your body goes quiet. And that quiet is the clue. If gravity were a force grabbing you, why would it seem to disappear at the exact moment you're falling straight through it? Einstein stared at that and said something disturbing. Free fall is not the exception. It's the closest thing to rest the universe ever gives you. Standing still is the weird state. It's the forced state. Normal life is you being held off your natural path. So what? Are you being held off from? If gravity isn't a pull, but a shape of space, and time themselves are curved then down, isn't really a direction, it's the way your world is guiding you through spacetime. Which means the ground isn't saving you from falling. It's constantly interrupting a fall you can't see. And once that lands, the next question is unavoidable. If you're not truly at rest when you're standing still, what does falling actually mean in Einstein's universe? If this idea feels unsettling, that's a good sign. It means you're not just hearing words, you actually rewiring how you think about reality, and that's exactly why this kind of content matters. Concepts like gravity, falling, rest, and motion aren't just physics trivia. They shape how you intuitively understand the universe and your place inside it. If you don't slow down and truly understand them, your brain will automatically snap back to the old, comfortable illusions. That's why I want to ask you something simple but important. Did this perspective challenge the way you've always imagined gravity? If it did, leave a comment saying I was wrong about gravity. Writing it forces your brain to lock the idea in, and it tells me you're actually engaging with the deeper meaning, not just passively watching. If you're finding value here, take a second to hit the like button. It helps this kind of content reach people who are curious enough to question reality instead of just accepting it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing that now, because what comes next gets even more disturbing. We're about to see why, in Einstein's universe, falling isn't just something you do. It's something everything is already doing, all the time. So before we go further, pause for a moment and ask yourself, if standing still is already unnatural, what does that say about motion, orbits, and even your everyday life? Your brain treats down like a fact, like a built-in direction of the universe. You wake up, you stand, you walk, you drop your keys, and everything agrees. Down is down. Gravity is a pull. End of story. But that confidence is exactly the trap, because it's not based on physics, it's based on survival. Your nervous system evolved to predict motion fast, not to understand space-time correctly. Here's the first crack in the story. When you feel heavy, what you're feeling is not gravity itself. It's pressure, contact, the floor pushing back. If you remove that, contact if you free sense of gravity vanishes. That should bother you, because it means your body isn't directly sensing gravity as a pulling force, the way it senses heat or pain. It's sensing the resistance to motion. It's sensing being prevented from falling. And this is where the everyday intuition collapses. In free fall, you are not being released from gravity. You are being released from the thing that was faking gravity for your senses. The push of the ground, that's why astronauts orbiting Earth feel weightless, even though Earth's gravity is still strong up there. They're not outside gravity. They're inside it so completely that their bodies are just following the curve without being interrupted. Now notice what your brain does with this. It insists, but I'm not moving. I'm sitting still, because your eyes see stability, your inner ear feels pressure, and your muscles can relax. But that stillness is only still relative to the room. It's not still relative to the path gravity is trying to give you. The floor is forcing you to deviate from a natural trajectory through So, the sensation you call normal standing, sitting, resting is actually a constant fight against your natural motion. Let's make it sharper. Imagine you're in that falling elevator again. For a few seconds, your phone floats. Your keys hover. Your stomach lifts. Everything feels like space itself has turned off gravity. But nothing turned off. What changed is that you and everything around you stopped being forced upward by the floor. The pressure disappeared. The weight disappeared. And your brain, which equates pressure with gravity, screams, "Gravity is gone." That scream is the illusion talking. Here's the unsettling part. Your entire sense of reality is built on this kind of mistake. You trust the feeling of weight as proof of a pulling force. But Einstein's view is that weight is proof of the opposite, that you're being held away from free motion. Which means the calmest, most at-rest state your body can experience is one that feels like falling. And if that's true, then the next step becomes unavoidable. Einstein didn't just say, your intuition is wrong. He said the definition of gravity is wrong. Not a pull, not a force, something stranger, something geometric. Before we go there, drop a quick comment if this flipped a switch in your head. Write down is a trick if you want me to keep going deeper. Einstein didn't wake up one morning and casually decide to redefine gravity. He was cornered by a contradiction that refused to go away. If gravity were a force like magnetism or electricity, then falling should feel like being pulled. But it doesn't. It feels like nothing. That single fact haunted him, because in physics, nothing happening is not a small detail. It's a clue. His breakthrough came from a shockingly simple realization. There is no experiment you can perform while freely falling that will tell you whether gravity exists at all. Inside that falling elevator, every object floats exactly as it would in deep space. Light travels straight. Objects drift. Your body behaves as if gravity had vanished. But gravity hasn't vanished. It has become invisible. And that invisibility is the key. This is what Einstein called the principle of equivalence. And it is far more disturbing than it sounds. It says that being in free fall in a gravitational field is physically indistinguishable from floating far away from all mass. Not almost indistinguishable. Completely. If gravity were truly a force, this would be impossible. Forces leave fingerprints. They push, pull, stretch, heat. Gravity, in freefall, leaves none. So Einstein took the unthinkable step. He removed gravity from the list of forces altogether. In his universe, gravity is not something acting on you. It is something shaping the stage you move through. Space and time themselves are curved, and your body simply follows the straightest possible path inside that curve. Falling is not being dragged downward. Falling is doing nothing at all. Here's where the idea turns unsettling. If falling is the natural state, then what you call standing still is an unnatural one. When you stand on the ground, the floor is constantly accelerating you upward ever, so slightly preventing you from following your natural space-time trajectory. That upward push is what your muscles feel as weight. Gravity didn't create that sensation. The ground did. Now, pause and let that sink in. The Earth is not pulling you down. The Earth is warping spacetime, and the ground is pushing you away from the path you would otherwise take. which means gravity is not an interaction between objects, but a relationship between geometry and motion. You are not responding to a force, you are navigating a shape. This reframing quietly destroys the idea of absolute rest. There is no privileged state where you are truly not moving. Freefall feels like floating because it is the closest thing to inertia gravity allows. Everything else, standing, sitting, leaning, is a deviation forced upon you by matter resisting the geometry beneath it. And once gravity becomes geometry, a darker implication appears. If space and time can curve, then motion, rest, and even the passage of time itself are no longer universal. They depend on where you are and how you move. When you hear the word fall, your mind imagines something short and violence living, dropping, crashing. But Einstein's gravity doesn't work that way. In his universe, the most stable motions are often just falls that never quite reach the ground. And once you see that, the sky stops looking calm. Take the moon. Intuitively, it feels like the moon is going around Earth, locked into a graceful circular path by some invisible tug of war. But that picture is wrong. The moon is falling. Right now, it is constantly accelerating toward Earth, just like a dropped object. The only reason it doesn't crash is that as it falls, the surface of Earth curves away beneath it. The moon keeps missing. This isn't poetic language, it's literal geometry. In Einstein's view, Earth bends the space-time around it, and the moon follows the straightest possible path through that curved geometry. That straight path just happens to look like an orbit to us. Remove the curvature, and the moon would drift off in a straight line. Increase it enough, and the orbit collapses. Nothing is being held up. Nothing is being pulled in a circle. The moon is simply doing what free-falling objects do, moving naturally through a distorted space-time landscape. Here's the unsettling turn. This isn't a rare cosmic trick. It's happening everywhere, all the time. Satellites, space stations, planets, even galaxies are locked into vast, invisible falls. What you call stability is often just a balance between motion and curvature. The universe looks calm because its falls are smooth. Now bring this idea back down to Earth. You, too, are part of this geometry. If the ground vanished beneath you, you wouldn't suddenly start falling. You would stop being interrupted. Your body would finally be allowed to follow its natural space-time path. The fall wouldn't feel dramatic. It would feel quiet, weightless, almost peaceful. And this reframes everyday life in a disturbing way. When you walk, when you sit, when you sleep, your body is constantly being nudged off its preferred trajectory by contact forces, chairs, shoes. Those forces are the real disturbances. Gravity is the background shape that everything is already obeying. There's a subtle emotional shift here. Orbits feel safe because they're familiar. Falling feels dangerous because it's associated with loss of control. But in Einstein's universe, falling is control-free motion. It's the universe letting you go. Stability comes not from resisting gravity, but from moving in harmony with the curvature beneath you. And that leads to a deeper question one that Einstein couldn't avoid. If gravity shapes motion by shaping space-time, what else does it shape? If it can curve space, can it also bend time itself? Here's where Einstein's idea stops being a clever redefinition and starts feeling personal. Because once gravity is not a force but a curvature of space-time, you can't keep time separate from the story. Time isn't a neutral river flowing in the background. Time is part of the geometry. And gravity bends it. That sounds abstract until you realize what it implies. Two people can live through different amounts of time simply because they're at different heights in a gravitational field. Not because of perception, not because of psychology, because reality itself is keeping different clocks. This is gravitational time dilation, and it's one of the most disturbing consequences of Einstein's general relativity. The closer you are to a massive object, the slower your time runs relative to someone farther away. Dans er on. The surface, your time is slightly slower than it would be up in the sky. It's a tiny difference in daily life. So small you can't feel it, but it's real. It has been measured with precise atomic clocks. Gravity doesn't just shape motion, it reshapes the rate at which now unfolds for you. And if that's true, then what you call the present is already fractured. There isn't one universal tempo, there isn't one cosmic metronome. Every location inside gravity has its own pace of reality. The universe is not synchronized. Now, take that a step further. Think about a black hole. If gravity slows time, then extreme gravity doesn't just make time run a little slower, it can practically freeze it. At least from the perspective of someone far away, that means the strongest gravity doesn't merely pull objects inward. It traps them inside a different relationship with time itself. In a sense, gravity becomes a machine that sculpts the timeline. Here's the emotional punch. Gravity is not only telling matter where to go, it's telling your life how fast to happen. And the reason you don't notice is the same reason you don't notice Earth spinning. You're inside the system. Your brain experiences your local flow of time as normal because it has no access to an absolute reference. You don't feel time slowing because your thoughts, your heartbeat, your memories, your biology, everything slows together. The illusion of a universal now survives because you can't step outside your own clock. But Einstein's equations don't care about comfort. They say, time is malleable. Gravity reshapes it. And what we call falling is not just spatial motion. It's motion through a curved structure where time itself is part of the bend. So when you ask, am I falling right now? The disturbing answer becomes deeper than expected. You're not only being guided through space, you're being guided through a local version of time one that is subtly different from other versions of time elsewhere in the universe. And that sets up the next twist. If gravity can mimic acceleration, and acceleration can mimic gravity, then rest becomes a slippery concept. Maybe there isn't a truly fixed viewpoint at all. Maybe the universe doesn't provide a stable frame-only perspective. At this point, Einstein cornered reality with a question so simple, it feels unfair. If gravity and acceleration can produce the same physical effects, how could the universe possibly tell them apart? And if it can't, then the idea of absolute rest quietly collapses. Return to the elevator. Sealed. No windows. No signals from outside. If the elevator is sitting on Earth, you feel weight. If the elevator is accelerating upward in deep space at exactly the right rate, you feel the same weight. Every experiment you perform inside dropping objects, shining a beam of light, jumping gives identical results. From the inside, there is no test that can tell you whether you are standing still in gravity or accelerating through empty space. That's not a philosophical trick. It's a physical statement, and it leads to a brutal conclusion. There is no universal definition of rest, no fixed cosmic background that says, this is truly stationary. Motion and stillness only exist relative to something else. Gravity erases the last hope of a privileged frame. This becomes even stranger when light enters the story. Shine a beam of light across the elevator. If the elevator is accelerating upward, the light appears to curve downward. If the elevator is sitting in gravity, the same curvature appears. The light doesn't know whether it's being bent by acceleration or by gravity, and since light always travels straight through space-time, the only explanation left is that space-time itself is curved. Now pause and feel the discomfort. If light curves, space is not flat. If space is not flat, straight lines don't mean what you think they mean. And if straight lines are redefined, then rest loses its anchor. You're never simply sitting in place. You're always following a path shaped by geometry you can't see. This quietly destroys another comforting idea, the notion that the universe has a stable floor, a cosmic reference frame where things are truly at rest. Einstein's universe offers no such ground. Everything is either accelerating, falling, or following a geodesic through curved. Standing still is just a special case of being pushed off your natural path. And once absolute rest disappears, so does absolute perspective. What you call motion depends on where you are, how gravity curves your surroundings, and how your clock is ticking. The universe doesn't hand out a master viewpoint. It hands out local experiences. Here's the unsettling emotional beat. The calm, solid world you trust is built on resistance, floors, chairs, walls, forces preventing you from moving the way space-time wants you to move. The moment that resistance disappears, reality feels weightless and unfamiliar, not because something broke, but because something stopped interfering, which leads to the final uncomfortable realization. If there is no absolute rest, and if falling is the most natural state gravity allows, then your entire life is taking place inside a continuous, invisible descent. One your senses reinterpret as stability. By the time Einstein reached this point, the problem was no longer just gravity. It was reality itself. Because if there is no absolute rest, if falling is the most natural motion available, and if gravity reshapes time locally, then the idea of a single, universal, now starts to quietly disintegrate. Think about it. Your sense of the present depends on stability, on the feeling that you are here, at rest, while time flows past you. But Einstein's universe offers no such anchor. Your body is following a curved path through space. Your clock is ticking at a rate shaped by gravity. Your now is not a global moment, it's a local experience, stitched together by memory and perception. This is where the discomfort turns existential. Because if two observers in different gravitational fields experience time differently, then their presents do not perfectly align. There is no cosmic snapshot of the universe updating all at once. Reality does not refresh globally. It updates locally. And once you accept that, the question, "Are you falling right now?" transforms into something deeper. Falling is not an event. It's a condition, a constant state of motion through a curved structure where space and time are inseparable. You are not waiting for the future to arrive. You are already embedded in a space-time map where past, present, and future coexist as part of the same geometry. Einstein himself was deeply disturbed by this. He famously suggested that the distinction between past, present, and future is a stubborn illusion, persistent, emotionally powerful, but not fundamentally real. Gravity plays a key role in that illusion because it fractures time into local experiences while hiding the fracture from your senses. Your brain insists on a flowing now because it needs one to function. Decisions, emotions, identity, all of them rely on a narrative of movement through time. But physics does not promise that narrative is objectively true. It only promises that your local experience will feel coherent from the inside. So when you sit still and feel grounded, what you're really feeling is resistance. When you feel time passing, what you're really feeling is memory accumulating. And when you feel present, what you're really experiencing is a perspective one sliced through a much larger structure that does not privilege your moment over any other. That's the disturbing thing, Einstein proved. Gravity didn't just change how objects move. It changed what it means to exist now. You are not standing on solid ground, waiting for time to flow. You are moving through a curved reality that has no universal present and never did. If you're still here, it means you didn't just watch this video, you endured it, and that matters. Because ideas like these aren't comfortable, they force you to sit with the possibility that gravity, time, rest, and even the present moment are not what your intuition promised you they were. If this video genuinely shifted how you see reality, do one simple thing. Subscribe to the channel. This is exactly the kind of journey we take here, dismantling what feels obvious and replacing it with something deeper, stranger, and more honest. If you made it all the way to the end, leave a comment saying There is nitrogen monoxide now. It tells me you followed the entire chain of thought, from falling to gravity to time to existence itself. And if this video earned your trust, hit the like button. It helps this content reach other curious minds who are ready to question what feels solid. Finally, don't stop here. The next video appearing on your screen pushes this even further into what Einstein believed about reality, determinism, and whether the universe actually needs an observer. You're already falling. You might as well keep going. To be seen. Subscribe if you want to keep pulling on these threads, because from here on, things only get stranger. We're about to dismantle one of the most basic intuitions you have about where things exist and what falling even means. Here's the trap your intuition keeps stepping into. You picture a black hole as a thing sitting in space, like a cosmic vacuum cleaner with a mouth, a place you can point to, a dot on a star map, a dangerous object surrounded by empty nothingness. That mental image feels safe because it keeps space as the stage and the black hole as an actor. Einstein flips that. In general relativity, space is not a passive container. It's the thing that gets wounded, stretched, and folded. A black hole isn't primarily an object in space. It's what space becomes when it collapses. So, completely, that outward stops being an option. Let that land. If space itself is the fabric, then a black hole is not a hole punched into it. It's the fabric pulled so hard that every thread points inward, and that creates the first terrifying reframe. You don't fall toward a black hole the way you fall toward a cliff. You fall because the geometry beneath your feet is tilting your possible futures. Your path through space-time becomes biased, then dictated. Now, here's the next twist, and it's subtle but brutal. The event horizon is not a boundary in space the way a fence is a boundary on Earth. It's a boundary of possible paths. Outside the horizon, you still have at least one future where you can fire a rocket, beam a signal, or take some route that eventually leads away. Cross it, and every future you can physically access points deeper in. Not because you are weak, not because gravity is stronger than you, but because escape stops being a direction the universe allows. This is why people misunderstand what nothing can escape really means. They imagine some force dragging light back. But light isn't being grabbed like a rope. Light is simply following the straightest possible paths in curved spacetime and near the horizon. Those straightest paths all curved inward. If you want a real-life intuition, think of walking on a floor that slowly turns into a steep, smooth funnel. At first, you can walk sideways, even uphill a bit. But as the slope increases, every step you take, no matter where you aim, starts drifting downward. Eventually, you reach a region where the slope becomes so extreme that up is no longer a viable direction for your body to move. That's not a prison with bars. That's a reality with fewer options. And the most unnerving part, locally, it still feels normal. Your heartbeat, your breathing, the way your hands move, nothing announces the moment the universe locks the exit behind you. That is the psychological horror of relativity. The trap is not a sensation. It's a change in what can happen. Now ask yourself this. If inside is defined, not by a wall, but by the collapse of possible futures, then what does it even mean to say you're in a place? Here's where the story becomes deeply uncomfortable, because the event horizon is not just a physical boundary. It's a mental one. Your intuition wants a dramatic crossing, a violent moment where something unmistakable happens. But Einstein's universe is crueler than that. It gives you no warning. As you approach the horizon, nothing locally feels special. Your body isn't crushed. Your instruments don't scream. The laws of physics in your immediate surroundings still behave normally, especially if the black hole is massive. That's the trick. The universe lets you walk calmly into a situation you can never reverse. From your perspective, time keeps flowing forward. Seconds still feel like seconds. Thoughts still form in sequence. You can still decide to raise your hand or look around. Subjectively, you are alive in a continuous present, but globally, something catastrophic has already happened. The rest of the universe has been cut out of your future, and this is where relativity turns cruelly abstract. Outside observers never see you cross. They watch your clock slow, your image stretch, your signals thin out and redden, fading toward darkness. You become an asymptote, always approaching the horizon, never quite passing it. To them, you are trapped in an eternal almost. Both views are correct. There is no privileged perspective. Reality fractures into equally valid but incompatible stories, and Einstein refuses to choose between them. This is not a glitch. It's a feature of a universe where time is not absolute.